Good day everyone. In this video presentation, I will be discussing the chapter 4 of Science and Technology in Society about the Industrial Revolution in the 17th century. Our instructor for this course is Professor Jamela Ladjas, which I was tasked to report this topic. Line of this chapter is the Age of Enlightenment in 18th century, Copernican Revolution, Darwinian Revolution, Freudian Revolution, Information Age, Mesoamerican period at 1200 before Christ, 3rd century, Mesoamerican period on 1200s before Christ, 3rd century, in Anno Domini or in the Lord and the year of the Lords, the Middle East and 17th century, and the African Revolution. But before we start in this topic, we will be discussing the learning outcomes of this chapter. In the end of this chapter, the student should be able to define paradigm shift, articulate ways by which society is transformed by science and technology, trace the history of science and technology in different eras and civilization, and fourth is enumerate scientific and technological advancement made by people in some civilization of the 17th century. Industrial Revolution in 17th century. The Industrial Revolution was the transition of new manufacturing process in Europe and United States in the period from between 1760 to 1820 and 1840.
In the late 1700s, most people worked in the fields on land they did not own. Those who owned the land, called aristocrats, lived refined lives in elegant manor houses. Servants raised their children and did their housework. The landowners and the people who worked for them depended upon each other. It was a system that had existed for centuries. In towns across England and the United States, a series of extraordinary innovations would alter the way people lived and worked for the next 150 years. Inventors had found new ways to harness nature's energy. They built new kinds of machines powered by water, steam, and coal. The new machines replaced hand-powered tools. They did the same work, only cheaper and faster. Much of the work was done outside the home, in specially designed buildings, the first factories. Mechanization began in the textile mills of England, where one machine attached to a spinning wheel could do the work of 50 people. Fuel, clothing, and food all became more affordable. With the development of locomotives and steamboats, manufactured goods could now be sold halfway around the world. Families moved from the villages of their ancestors to new industrial towns. And a new class of people emerged, workers who produced goods. Industrialists, the people who owned the factories, employed hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And they made enormous profits in their industrial centers. But while the Industrial Revolution brought wealth to some and jobs for others, it came with a price tag. Pollution from coal-powered factories turned the cities black. Lack of housing created the first urban slums. And the demand for more and more goods and higher profits brought the exploitation of workers, including children.
Now let us define the paradigm shift. A paradigm shift is a major change in how people think and get things done that upends and replace a prior paradigm. Paradigm shift can result after the accumulation of anomalies or evidence that challenges the status quo or due to some revolutionary innovation or discovery. In this picture, this is the building capacity of paradigm shift. First, scaling up replication and overall contribution to global low-carbon development pathways. Second, knowledge and learning. Third, contribution to the creation of an enabling environment. Fourth, contribution to regulatory and policy framework. Next is the Age of Enlightenment in 18th century. The Age of Enlightenment was the intellectual and philosophical movement dominated the world of ideas in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries. These pictures below are the pictures of inventors who are involved with the Enlightenment in 18th century. The Enlightenment, also known as Age of Reason, was an intellectual and cultural movement in the 18th century that emphasized reason over superstition and science over blind faith. The effect of this is it encouraged criticism of the corruption of monarchy. In this age of enlightenment, the king of monarchy is Louis XVI and the aristocracy. The main idea of age enlightenment is it includes a range of ideas centered on the pursuit of happiness, sovereignty of reason and evidence of the senses as the primary sources of knowledge and advanced ideals such as liberty, progress, toleration, fraternity, constitutional government, and separation of church and state. Copernican Revolution. The Copernican Revolution was a theory of Nicolaus Copernicus. Nicolaus Copernicus was a resistance polymath, active as a mathematician, astronomer, and Catholic canon, who formulated a model of the universe that placed in the sun rather than Earth at its center. Copernican revolution is a shift in the field of astronomy from a geometric understanding of the universe, centered around the Earth, to the heliocentric understanding, centered around the sun as articulated by the Polish astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus in the 16th century. This theory gives us important framework for understanding the universe. When Copernicus replaced the Earth with the Sun at the center of the universe, it changed the role of astronomy in society. A lot of resistance to Copernicus' theory came not only from within the scientific community, but also a result of a social implication of a heliocentric universe. The heliocentric theory of Copernicus, in the book called One of the Revolution of Heavenly Bodies, that was published as Copernicus lay in the deathbed. Copernicus proposed that the sun, not the earth, was the center of a solar system, such as the model called a heliocentric model. The ordering of the planet known to Copernicus in this new system is illustrated in the following figure, which we recognize as a modern ordering of those planets. Darwinian Revolution. This was a theory of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist. Best known for his contribution to the science of evolution. His proposition that all species of life have descended over time from common ancestors is now considered a fundamental concept in science. His theory of evolution is a groundbreaking revolution in both the scientific and religious realms. The Origin of Species, authored by Charles Darwin, was published. His book changed how people approach biology forever and has fundamental impacts on modern science, religion, and other aspects of the society. Darwin centrally important the development of scientific and humanist idea because he first made people aware of their place in the evolutionary process when the most powerful and intelligent form of life discovered how humanity had evolved. Charles Darwin considered the three reasons occur by means of natural selection. First is the overproduction and variation. Some species produce many offspring, but not all of these young will survive. It means not all of the offspring do not have the characteristic to survive in the environment. Second, the competition and selection. Competition may or may not be direct, but the idea is always on the survival of organism. The organism that survive more likely reproduce, which transfer their characteristics to the offspring. The third is the environmental change. The environment will not adjust for the organism, but rather it is always the organism that will change to adapt to the environment. For the further explanation of Darwinian revolution, let's watch this video.
He introduced the theory of evolution, stating that everyone passed through a process of natural selection, which means only the fittest will survive. The theory of evolution describes how organisms change over time as a result of changes in physical and behavioral traits. It is a change that allows organism to better adapt to their environment and be something that would be more competitive to survive. This theory was considered one of the most controversial intellectual theory and received various questions mostly from people who came from a religious background. It is said that the concept of evolution doubted the existence of the creator. Due to the conflict between science and religion, people were divided. Some people believed that the theory explained the origin of life, while others remained faithful to their religion and refused to accept his theory. Eventually, after some time, people understood that Darwin's theory is not against the teachings of the church and they can both coexist.
Freudian revolution. This theory was proposed by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was also considered to be the father of psychiatry. Freud was born to Galician Jewish parents in the Moravian town of Freiburg in the Australian Empire. He qualified as a doctor of medicine in 1881 at the University of Vienna. He was appointed a docent in neuropathology and became affiliated professor in 1902. Freudian Revolution. Simon in 1856 to 1939 explained how human mind works and cure its mild illness. He called his method psychoanalysis, and its main goal is to make unconscious to conscious. He also developed topographical and structural model of the mind to basically explain the sources of human behavior. Freudian revolution, there are two models of mind which Freudians explain the sources of human behavior. First is the topographical model of mind. The topographical model of mind was divided into three: the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. First, the conscious, which consists the thoughts and focus in the present states of the mind. The preconscious mind, which consists of what we can be retrieved for the memory. Next is the subconscious mind, which consists of primitive desires, wishes, or impulse, which is mediated by the preconscious mind. The next model of mind is the structural model. This consists of three divided parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. The ego drives a socially accepted way to satisfy the demands of id as it operates the conscious and unconscious mind. The id comprises eros, the life of or survival instinct of the man, and thanatos, the death or destructive instinct of man. The superego operates based on the principles of morality that drive man to become socially responsible and behave in the acceptable manner. It basically means that superego drives a man to follow the rules and resolve the conflict between the ego and the id. The next topic is the information age. The information age, also known as the computer age, digital age, or new media age, is a historical period that began in the mid-20th century, characterized by a rapid epochal shift from the traditional industry established by the Industrial Revolution to an economy primarily based upon information technology. People view communication as one of the most important tools in understanding society. Communication is defined as an act or process of using words, sounds, signs, and behaviors to express or exchange information or to express ideas, thoughts, feelings, etc. to someone else. It took a lot of time for communication to proper or develop what is being used today. Along with the development of technology, the impacts of distance, location, and time were eradicated. Most of us believe that the beginning of information age is the time when computers were made available to people, since computer is the greatest tool used to access the World Wide Web. Information age, according to Alberts and Pops in 1997, in their paper entitled The Information Age, an anthology on its impact and consequences, is divided into three modern information revolution. The first modern information revolution, second modern information revolution, and the third modern information revolution. The first modern information revolution is the invention of telegraph by Samuel Morse in 1791 to 1872. The invention of first telephone by Alexander Graham Bell on 1847 to 1922. The invention of radio communication, sending and receiving messages, radio signals by Guglielmo Marconi on 1874 to 1937. Next is the second modern information revolution in the mid-20th century. The second modern information revolution is the invention of early generation computers were made available to everyone by Lee De Forest on 1873 to 1961. The invention of television as one of the best communication tools by fellow Taylor Farnsworth on 1926 to 1931. Next is the invention of artificial satellites were built and link the world by Sergei Korolev on 1957, and the invention of qualified information and measured it in days by Claude E. Shannon on 1916 to 2001. Next is the third modern information revolution. The third modern information revolution is labeled as knowledge revolution. This period is only about the development of communication-related technologies that improve society. The next topic is the Mesoamerican period in 1200 before Christ, 3rd century Anno Domini, Year of the Lords. The term Mesoamerica was the Greek word of mesos, meaning in the middle. In this period is characterized by the following civilization: the Olmecs in 1500s before Christ, 400 before Christ, Mayans in 300 before Christ to 900 Anno Domini, and the Aztecs in 12 to 15th century. Olmecs in 1500 before Christ to 400 before Christ. The Olmec civilization is known as the archaeological culture. This means there is a collection of artifacts thought by archaeologists to present a particular society. The top of the society are priests and the noble who live in the ceremonial centers. Normal people live in farming villages around the elites. Carve colossal heads from volcanic rocks as a portrait of rules. Invented calendar and carved hieroglyphic writing into stone. Olmecs is also known as the mother culture of Mesoamerican. This is the Olmec head statue, which is the Ponting statue. The Olmec colossal head are the most famous artifacts left behind by the Olmec civilization. The Olmec people are believed to have occupied a large part of modern-day southern Mexico. The next is the Mayans. The Mayan civilization in 300 before Christ to 900 Anno Domini. The Maya civilization was one of the most dominant indigenous society in Mesoamerica. Indigenous society is the term used to describe Mexico and Central America before the 18th century Spanish conquest. Mayans developed method of farming such as shifting agriculture and raised bed farming. Mayans was organized into city-state without political unity but bounded economically. They developed numbering system including space value and the concept of zero. They developed hieroglyphic form of writing that were used for recording astronomical observations, rituals, and religious matters but was burnt during the invasion of Spanish conquerors. They also developed a solar calendar with 365 days and ritual calendars with 260 days. Next is the Aztecs in 12th to 15th century. The Aztecs were famous for their agriculture, cultivating all available land, introducing irrigation, draining swamps, and creating artificial islands in the lakes. They developed a form of hieroglyphic writing, a complex calendar system, and built famous pyramids and temples. The picture below are the example of the floating gardens of Mayans. Aztecs also built empire which has a ruler with his council consisting of nobles, priests, and military leaders. They developed a calendar with 365 days and a ritual calendar with 260 days. They also believe that illness is a punishment from the gods but still uses herbs and medicine for treatment. The next topic is the Middle East in 17th century. Middle East is a term used to describe a geographical location that extends from Egypt to Afghanistan, where islands arose. Islam is a religion of right actions, rules, and laws that began in 17th century and follows a teaching of Muhammad, who was believed by Muslims as the messenger of God. Islam is also Arabic word meaning the submission of God. Islam have 5 pillars. These are the witness or the shahada, the worship or salat, the fasting or shon, the tithing or zakat, and lastly is the pilgrimage or hajj. In the Catholic, we called our holy book as a Bible, but in the Islam, they call their holy book as Quran or Quran. The Islam contribution to geography is the Salat prayers requires knowledge in geography to know the direction of Qibla, the direction that should be faced when Muslims pray. In 1166, Al-Idrisi produced very accurate maps including the world map that has continents, mountains, rivers, and famous cities. Muslims are great navigators for the expedition of other countries. Ferdinand Magellan and Christopher Columbus imported Muslim navigators. The next contribution of Islam to mathematics is Muslim invented symbol to express all unknown quantity. They also made use of zero and decimal system. Muhammad and Musa al-Kharizmi in early 9th century, one of the first directors of the House of Wisdom, introduced algebra and solving equation. Next is the contribution to medical. Arabs make use of human cadaver to study and understand its anatomy and physiology. They wrote an encyclopedia of medical knowledge. This work was translated into Latin, and was used as a textbook in Europe up to 17th century. They also spearheaded the construction of the first Islam barimatans. They also spearheaded the construction of the first Islam bimaristans or hospital. The next topic is the African Revolution. African Revolution, like other Eastern civilization, are pioneers of some advancement of science technology. They work independently without any influence of European science. Some remarkable works of African were in the field of mathematics, metallurgy, architecture, and engineering, astronomy, medicine, and navigation. Remarkable contribution of Africans in the century are: African made use of first method of counting. Second, the modern concepts of mathematics that is globally accepted are used today in high school was first developed in Africa. Next, use advanced techniques for furnace that made it fuel efficient, which was 200 to 400 degrees Celsius hotter compared to 1600 degrees Celsius furnace used by the Romans. Next, they created the building of Zimbabwe and the 11th interconnected rock-hewn church of Lalibela in Ethiopia, which are considered as wonders of the world. They also have the observation of Sirius A and B by Dogon people. Shitic people use their knowledge of stars and constellation to calculate and establish an accurate calendar. Next is the pioneered some medical practice like installation of false teeth, filling of dental cavities, broken bone setting, bone traction, vaccination, brain surgery, skin grafting, and autopsy. They also made use of plants like a bark of Salix capiens, a source of aspirin, Kaupictate for treating diarrhea, and Rowolfia vomitoria as a source of reserpine for hypertension and snake bite. They also build boats in varying sizes, as the largest that can carry a load of 80 tons. The Industrial Revolution had both positive and negative effects on society and the economy, but the positive effects outweighed the negative. Thousands of jobs were created by the use of steam power allowed faster transportation of people and goods. It allowed parts of the world to be reached and visited that would not have been possible without the use of steam power. Also, steam power allowed different regions of the world to unite and share ideas. There are few negative aspects to the use of steam power, such as population. So that would be all in this chapter. I hope you learned something. If you have any queries regarding in this topic, you can ask me. Thank you and God bless.